Alrighty, welcome. So this is a new video series that's aimed at you guys, the game devs, so you can learn lessons from games that are released or in some cases games that were never released. So we're going to be looking at games that are successes, games that are failures, and some that are in between. So therefore this is not a game review or a gameplay review. It's more like a learning tool, so you guys can take the lessons learned from these games and apply it to your own work. So today we're going to be talking about Mewgenics. And what is Mewgenics? If you haven't heard about it, it is a cat breeding tactics roguelike. The game sold over 1 million copies in its first week, which by my math is somewhere in the ballpark of $17 million in profit for the team after Steam takes its cut. But you might be saying, oh, Mr. Handsome Grind Night fellow, my game is not a cat breeding game, it's not a tactics game, and it's not a roguelike game. But that doesn't matter, because all the points that we're going to be looking at in this video and others in the series, we're going to be looking at things that are broadly applicable to your game's design choices and the way that you go about planning with your team and executing your idea. So if you stay tuned to the end, my most important point for your game is going to be the last one. That's how you do it. That's how you retain viewership, right? So point number 8 is going to be the most important one. But point number 1 is going to be the most contentious point. So we're going to get that point out of the way first. You can be offended for a minute, and then we're going to move on. And that first point, number 1, is the aesthetic. So let's look at this. So what demographic right now has the most expendable income and still plays video games? It's childless millennials, okay? Millennials love cats. They have them as proxies for their own children. They love cute animals, and so a cat-based aesthetic is going to be super effective. That's 4 times damage on millennials. The game is also lighthearted, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which a lot of people really seem to enjoy. We have a lot of games who take themselves very seriously. Oh, this character is the son of a god, or this one has to save the world from whatever. It's just a fun game, and people are appreciating that. And the artwork reflects that too. The artwork is silly, it's goofy. It's not low effort is the wrong word, but it's not high fidelity, right? And there's a very small number of people that are critical of that, but the overwhelming majority appreciate it. One thing I will say about the aesthetic, to be careful about the humor that you put in your game. This game is a millennial game made for millennials by a millennial. And so therefore its humor is kind of already dated. If you're over the age of 30, you probably find it really funny. If you're under the age of 30, you probably don't find it that funny, but you still find it to be a good game. And this humor is going to age poorly over the years. So just be careful if you're implementing something like that as a core part of your game. And I will say that if you are better about writing interesting characters in your game, it can alleviate some of the need for this constant humor in the game. The humor is also vulgar, so it involves things like cat intercourse and gore, exploding cats into guts and blood. And so, yes, it's very amusing. Some people find it degenerate. It creates some debate. But because of this, it narrows your scope. It excludes children, for example. I would not want my child under the age of 15, 14, whatever, to be looking at a game where cats are having intercourse, creating babies, drawing satanic circles to create babies, exploding in gore, putting poop on the ground. It's just, it's just not something that kids ought to be exposed to. I think most parents would feel that way. So be careful about that. It is very entertaining, but it does narrow the scope of your audience. And in the case of Mewgenics, this seemed to have worked out for them. It was a measured risk. Okay, so moving on to point number 2 is branding. And it's kind of similar to point number 1's criticism there, but branding, they say that no press is bad press, and that is certainly the case with Mewgenics. So the title, Mewgenics, is a play on the word eugenics, right? And so this sparks a lot of debate online, especially on Reddit and the Steam forums between soy jacks who hate it. Oh, eugenics is so evil, it's terrible. I can't believe you'd make a game like that. How far have we fallen? There are chuds who love it. Oh, eugenics is based and yada yada. And most gamers who enjoy the game just don't really care, right? They're enjoying the game. They don't care that it's based on eugenics. They don't care that it's called Mewgenics. They're just enjoying the game. But so in this case, the contentious name there is sparking some debate and drawing a lot of attention to the game. And ultimately, that seems to have been a good thing for this game. And I think for most games, it's going to be that way. So don't underestimate the power of being provocative with the branding of your game. But you need to measure the risk against the potential benefit. Is it worth it? What do we stand to gain from this? Also, as a last point here with branding, a lot of people have not made it this far in the game yet, but you will see more debate when they encounter the Mecha Hitler boss. because that is a boss in the game later on. So expect to see more debate. Okay, point number 3 is going to be a high skill floor. What does that mean? Well, the term high skill floor means basically that it's hard to be bad at the game. The game does not require quick reflexes like Call of Duty. It doesn't require optimization like World of Warcraft. And it doesn't require actions per minute like some sort of RTS game where you have to click and do a lot of things. So because of that, it's got a high skill floor. It's easy for people to get into. It's hard for you to be bad at the game. And well, what does this mean? Well, in the previous point, we narrowed our audience scope to exclude young children, right? But now we're broadening our game scope to accommodate people who don't have those skills. Typically, those are going to be like old dad gamers and women. These are 2 groups of people that typically don't have quick reflexes or high actions per minute. So this game is perfect for them. So you're widening the accessibility of your game, you're increasing the size of your audience, and therefore you are increasing the number of people who want to spend money on your game, okay? Point number 4 is player time investment. So this game really respects player time. And this is appropriate because they know that their target audience is the millennial demographic who are working or who have real life things going on. These are not people who can sit and play for 12 hours a day, typically, with some exceptions, obviously. And so the way that the game respects your time is that these runs, it is a roguelike, the runs are segmented into short battles interspersed with rewards or random events. Now, the short battles only last a minute or 2, and then after a battle, you're going to go run into a treasure chest and loot an item, and then you might run into a random event in which you have to pull something out of a toilet, and then after that, you are back into the next battle. And in this game, you are punished if you decide to quit and close the game mid-fight, because that is it's an anti-cheating mechanic. But if you close the game before or after fights, there's not any penalty at all. Which means that at any given time, this game is demanding 4 to 5 minutes of your time at maximum, okay? It's very easy to put down. And it's also hard to put down because it's a very fun game. So anyway, how much time does your target audience have to invest, right? Are you appealing to a demographic of players who can spend 12 hours a day playing the game nonstop? Or does your target audience involve people who have jobs, who have kids, who have chores, who have things going on in their life that they need to put down the game and pay attention to? Now, unfortunately, if you are making an MMO, this lesson is maybe not applicable to something like that because MMOs, by their nature, do demand a pretty significant amount of time invested into them. Okay, so the point number 5 is going to be that the game is not overwhelming. You have probably played games where at the outset you are overwhelmed with the amount of content and mechanics and elements within the game, and you may have put a game down because of that. This game does it really well, right? So Mewgenics has 14 classes. They have the fighter, the ranger, the mage, and so on and so forth, all of your RPG classes. Each one of those classes has 75 skills and passives or more. It's at least 75 skills and passives for each class, times 14. However, when you first start the game, you are limited to 4 classes. So you're not overwhelmed by choice. And furthermore, each time you level up, you don't get a choice of 75 skills and passives. You get a choice of 4 of them that were randomly selected for you. And so you're not ever overwhelmed with choice. You're not paralyzed. You don't have analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. You're choosing between 4 things when you level up. So it makes it very easy to stick to and not get discouraged about. So you're never stun locked by that choice. And although as you play more, the complexity does increase. You get access to more classes. You get access to new items. And in fact, you do unlock new skills and passives for your classes to learn as you clear areas with them, which is very cool. Okay, point number 6, we talked about a high skill floor, but this game has a high skill ceiling too. And what does that mean? Well, a high skill ceiling means that if players are dedicated enough, they can be very good at the game and they can put themselves at a significant advantage compared to the casual player. It allows for them to optimize their cats and have very strong runs through the more difficult areas of the game. So how does it do this? Well, your combination of skills and equipment bonuses, those 2 things together can add near infinite variation to your team composition and even individual cats. And this is the type of thinking that keeps me up at night. It's like, what if I ran this cat with this ability and this item? Like, that would be crazy. And but what about this other one? And in fact, as far as the content creation goes on YouTube right now, you are seeing people that are coming up with some crazy combinations. It's very fun to see. Breeding is another way that they facilitate this high skill ceiling. So breeding is a core mechanic of the game where you have cats with positive traits mate with each other, and the offspring are going to be generally better off than random cats that you find. And the way that it does this is it's gated behind furniture for the house, and the house furniture will increase the odds that your cat inherits a positive stat or ability or even a mutation, which is something that we're not really going to get into here. But all you need to know is that this is a game where you don't, if you want to be really, really good at it and optimize, you don't dump tens of hours into it, you dump hundreds of hours into it. So that is very cool for that portion of your player base who's interested in doing that. Point number seven is that this game, well, your game needs a clear scope and difficulty goal. All right. So Mewgenics, if you didn't know, Mewgenics took about 14 years to come out. It was delayed by over a decade. Why is that? Well, the team had contrasting opinions on the scope of the game, what it should be like, what should be in it. Some people left the team frustrated. Some people were fired. Other ones were hired. And so 14 years later, we have a finished product that's very good. It should have maybe taken like half the time, right? But part of the reason that happened is because and I don't know, I'm not internally involved in the team, but I will say that your team, for your game, you guys need a clear design document, and you need to establish the scope of your game right off the bat, and everybody on the team ought to agree on that. If they don't, then, best luck to them. They can leave and go do something else. But your team does need to be on the same page about what is our game, what's going to be in the game, how long should we expect to have to work on it, and not get too wrapped up in scope creep, which is a term I'm sure you've heard. Speaking about the difficulty here too, the difficulty is appropriate. It's not really hard, but it's also not really easy. And there hasn't been a whole lot of complaint that I have seen about the overall difficulty. And for those players who do want a more difficult game, after they clear the content, they can go back and increase the difficulty of these maps and go back and play them again. And I think there's even an insane difficulty. So people that are really dedicated can get what they want from the game. So it's very cool. All right, I promised you the most important point in my opinion. So the last point, number 8, is to listen. Reuse your own work, okay? You are spending a lot of time in your game making assets, you're making music, you're making enemies, you're programming AI in many cases, you're adding items to the game, you're adding events to the game. Mewgenics reuses all of these, okay? Your items can break, so you'll never get an item, oh, I already have that item. Well, no, it doesn't matter because that other item that you have is eventually going to break, and so now you have a backup, okay? So you're reusing items, you're reusing mechanics, you fight enemies repeatedly, and despite this, you'll have to take my word for it if you haven't played the game, but it's still fun every time. So you are reusing a lot of the stuff that you built for the game. It's so important. If you spent 10 hours cumulatively doing the artwork for a boss and the attacks for a boss and the AI for a boss, and your players fight that boss one time, right, it's not that great. If you have your players fight the same boss multiple times, you are multiplicatively adding to the value of you having created that asset or whatever system it is. So the point is, find a fun way to reuse the stuff that you've already worked on, and don't make it a one and done thing. You'll get way more mileage out of it, and you can put less time or the same amount of time into a better game. I will say though, be careful of randomness. Talking about random events in this game, the random events are fun. You will see them more than once. It is a reused asset. But some of the random events punish the players without allowing them any agency to counterplay it, right? So, for example, you might run into an event which gives your teammate the madness debuff, which enables their AI and has them attack allies and enemies. And in some cases, this can be a debilitating and run-ending debuff, and you have no way, you don't have any option to walk away from it or to outplay it or to have a higher stat. You just get the debuff, and that is the number one criticism about this game that I have seen. By far, it is, I was doing this great run, I got this random debuff, I had no way to counterplay it, and I'm pissed off. So just be careful about that. Don't do that to your players. Overall, this game was fantastic. It's a resounding success. There are one or two things that either could have done better or that, in my view and in a lot of people's view, is a mistake, like the debuff thing. And that's about it. That's about all I have for you game devs learning from Mewgenics. Learn from the good things that they did. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this as a bonus point, that the music in this game is fantastic. But since I am not a music genius or anybody who knows a whole lot about music, I can't sit here and pretend that I can tell you why it is that the music is good. But you'll just have to take my word for it. The music is good. People love it. And so maybe consider that when you're making your game, is put a little bit of love into the background music, even if you don't have lyrics. All right. We'll see you in the next one.